Acquisition, I have to start with companies are bought, not sold. In fact, if you have no interest in your company, you decide to sell it and you want to go out, think twice or 3 times because it's a really painful process. So companies are bought, not sold. By the way, it is a consolidating industry. So there's only literally a handful, maybe a little over a handful of companies that can buy companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. If you're a VC-backed company, I'll keep that as a premise. That's the type of outcome your investors need and require. It's either there's only 2 good ways out of a VC. An outcome for an acquisition for a good multiple, or go an IPO, which has been challenging lately, but those are the 2. So you got to be planning for it, but there's only so many people can do it. So it has to be part of your strategy. I'm not saying figure out day 1, do I figure out, well, I'm going to sell the company to XYZ. But you have to be thinking about it because you will make decisions tactically. Your go-to-market, what product, how you package it, how you price it, how you position it, who you partner with early. You'll make those decisions differently if you think, if I really think about it, in the end, it's really these 3 companies that I want to get close to. Say with EMC at Avamar, it was EMC and NetApp I want to get close to. It changed our marketing. I literally marketed to EMC executives. You know, Joe Tucci asked me, I want to make sure I keep a lot of your marketing. You guys were everywhere. And I said to him, well, we targeted you. I mean, literally, I targeted Joe Tucci. I knew where he was going to go. I knew his executive accounts. So guess what? We penetrated those. And when the executives, by the way, I know, have you ever talked to EMC? Why don't you mention this to Joe? What would happen is the customers, like Cisco, were more than happy. Because they're looking for smart things to go and tell the executive that comes in. And lo and behold, you know, wherever Joe went. And so we never finished the conversation with Joe, because once I said that, he's like, okay, well, we just need to keep it. It was a short conversation in the hallway, but we literally target him. If you know what your outcome's going to be, and that outcome's not necessarily to sell yourself, but you can target it. And there's not 20. Don't tell me you got 20 people. You're not thinking about the market right. There's a handful. So think about it. It changes the way you market. It changes what you do in BD, et cetera. And then really, big brother's a logical partner, right? So pick your big brother. We went through it. You really need to focus on that. It's the #1 asset. They're typically the ones that are going to be kicking the tires and say, boy, we should do this before someone else takes it. It's a good way to have it. Very minimum, it's your stalking horse if someone else comes trying to acquire you. Also, if you went public, it's a good way to say, and I also have this big brother who's driving it and is very happy, great reference. So in no case is a big brother's bad, but for acquisitions, it becomes critical. You have to understand the acquisition process of the different companies. They're all different. They have a process. Some are more disciplined than others. You need to understand it and understand where you're at in the process. It's kind of like dating. Are you on a date or are you just friends? Very different way you end the evening, right? So, but in the end, you have to understand. And if you don't know, get professional help. There's people here, right? Ask someone that's been through it. But you have to understand it because it changes what you do. And I guess the dating example may not be good. And nothing happens until you get a business sponsor. So what's a business sponsor? It's someone that owns a chunk of the portfolio that you make sense in. So it's not someone low. It's not someone that owns one product. But it's not the SVP typically. It's a guy that owns a product. So owns that product line, owns enough of the portfolio that you fit in as a line extension, et cetera. But that's a guy. Once you know it, it's not hard to figure out who that person is. And if you only have this many companies to go after, you have this many possible business sponsors. And by the way, you don't have to cold call them and like dating. Hey, I have nothing else going on. I'd like to get together with you, right? There's industry events like this. In a 6-month period, if you know who you want to get to, trust me, you can cross paths with that person and have a good conversation. Hopefully about business, about them. And by the way, when you're talking about business and you did a deal with them, don't talk about your deal. Talk about, hey, I did this, it was great, you guys got all this, and talk about their side of the deal. But you can purposely do this. It's not stalking executives, right? But if you think about it, it's not that hard. It's repeatable. It's not a big universe. In fact, this room is a whole idea. There's only 800 storage guys rotating around. Trust me, you know most of them, right? This event's a good example of it. And then finding and developing. I don't think it's hard. And then it's like dating. Everyone's different, personality-based. There's different cultures. But you have to understand. People like to be approached differently. It's about finding things in common. Good business, and I'm not a... I guess, well, I'll leave that alone. It's probably a bad analogy, but basically, it is dating. It is different. You have to find ways to engage with that person on their business, what's important to them, and that's a good way to go into it. But again, Any one of your companies, I'd be challenged if there's more than 5 or 7 potential business sponsors for you in the entire industry. So think it through, make it part of your strategy tactics. Now we're going to talk a little bit getting to the knot hole, and to me it's important that any company I associate with, if someone's going to acquire it, it's going to work out for them. Nothing makes me prouder than when Joe Tucci says Avamar was the second best acquisition they've ever done, second to VMware. Makes me feel good, but also it's a good calling card because the world's small, so you got to make sure it lasts. So I did talk a little bit about how to get your employees and your technology through the knot hole, how to get to the other side, and a lot of it is talking about the culture. I use the slides as far as the Jeffrey Morris crossing the chasm. I tell them what's going to happen next inside the tornado. Literally expose them to it and really bring them to the other side. As an executive, you got to make sure you bring people on the other side. That's what they're acquiring. That's critical for the next time you approach these guys. And again, there's only a couple of them, so it's not like they're endless. But the other thing is conversations with them. And I'll talk about the crossing the chasm, but that's a language you don't use with big brothers. And the reason for it is it's different language. We talk all day long about crossing the chasm and all these different verbiages, but that's not how the big companies look at it. What they're looking at is it's a natural line extension to my product. They're up here in these large markets. That's where they're focusing. It is a different language. And also when you get on the other side, it's not about a disruption. It's about how to drive their market share. It's about how to make, for instance, Avamar was a natural line extension to EMC Legato. Before they acquired me, it was disruptive, changed the world. Afterwards, no, it makes complete sense in the portfolio. If you're trying to accomplish these things, Avamar's a perfect solution. No, of course it fits with Legato. But it changes. The other thing is you quickly change your language. So Clayton Christensen's a really good example of seeing what's next, or the inventor's dilemma and solution. And he talks about how the big companies all have this sustaining innovation. They always make it cheaper, faster going. By the way, if it looks like something cheaper and faster for EMC, HP, IBM to do, as a startup, you don't do it because you're going to get mulled over. So what you focus on, low-end disruption, or other non-consumers. Like dedupe was a non-consumer, right? People that used to use tape, I'm going to show them how to use disk more cost-effective way. So it caught them off guard. But once you get to the other side, you actually want to actively try to figure out how your product becomes part of their sustaining innovation of their product in their portfolio line. You have to literally change the way you think in the language, and you have to help your team do that. Otherwise, you're a rogue entity inside a big startup, and antibodies of rejection will come out from the big organization. So hopefully that makes sense, but it does change. It changes rather dramatically after acquisition. And I would say that if you can talk about more of the language in the eyes of the big company, which is this type of language, not the crossing the chasm language, you're much better off because to them, you understand their business.